Oh, we could fly.
This is your summer. That means Six Flags and the taste of an ice-cold Coca-Cola. We're talking thrilling coasters, delicious burgers, real moments together, and this. Coke is summer refreshment when you need it most, so you can hop on another ride or race down a slide at the water park. Six Flags and Coca-Cola. Come make it yours. Visit sixflags.com/Coke to save up to $20 on passes, plus daily tickets starting at $34.99.
Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino online.
I was only playing for fun, so winning was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's favorite free online social casino. You too could have the chance to win life-changing cash prizes. Absolutely anybody could be like Mary. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and play for free now. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details. The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of the winner.
Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. My name's Corby LaCroix, and the song you're hearing right now is called Great and Mighty One, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. But for now, here's your host and my friend, Aaron Conrad.
Great Redeemer, God of grace.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Unscripted from my studios in Old Hilliard, and really excited today. I'm excited. Like, one of my favorite couples in the whole world is the Alexanders, and so my guest today is Jeremy Alexander. Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll roll from there.
Jeremy Alexander here, longtime Columbus resident, huge fan of Aaron Conrad and everything that's happening in the unscripted space, and by day, I work for iHeart Media, media planning, selling, everything in the exciting world of audio. And by night, try to be a good husband and raise a couple of kids.
For real. So I want to start right there. First of all, if anybody's watching on video, you got to look over Jeremy's, I don't know, right or left shoulder. I'm not sure, my right from my left, but the unscripted hat, man, on the bookshelf, that means a lot. Like that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie.
It's there on every call. I'm on about a dozen calls a day, and it's that, and I got St. Jude right over here. So
it's perfect. It's the perfect mix. But
those are my offices.
So I have to mention, you and I met years ago. I don't know, let's just say 5 years ago. And then, the more I got to know you, got to know your wife, and I've always been amazed. I think one of the hardest spaces to work in, and so let's just start here. One of the hardest spaces to work in is advertising, let alone radio, which you're in. And what's incredible is your wife is still with Lamar. Is that right? And are we allowed to say that? Are we allowed to say the name of that company?
I haven't been given any definitive direction on that being a no-fly zone. I think we're good.
She's in the billboard advertising. I already said the company's name, but either way, just two incredible people working in very tough markets that went through pandemic and everything else. So I've always admired that about you both, because you're both very, very good at what you do. I've always just admired you both, as you know. But you're both very good at what you do, but it's a tough thing, right? Like advertising in any market is tough, but you're in two of the tougher markets. Would you agree?
No, you know what? Columbus I think it's a huge advantage. And I say that because there's so much growth. There's so much. It is a positive economy. You think, we both grew up. Krista and I are both from Northeast Ohio. Me coming from the Canton-Akron area, her from Cleveland area, and I think about would I rather be in Columbus than Cleveland? No brainer. I'd rather be in Columbus. We used to live in Cincinnati. Our daughter goes to school in Cincinnati. It's a beautiful city. Love it. Just like I love Cleveland. Still rather be here. You think about not just the growth of what's happening in the city, all these, it's become sort of like, this hotspot for VCs, and you've got startups in tech, and you've got, these, just drive down the highway and see Cover My Meds, and, all the things that are going on, Lower, all these organizations that are rooted here that are just, taking off. And in our business, that's where you want to be. I mean, look at the Intel investment that's coming and that kind of growth. I mean, this, to me, Columbus is a great place because you get those advantages that I mentioned, but you still get, the charm and the benefits of not being in a city the scale and size of, say, a Chicago or a, Detroit or, even on the grander side, New York or LA. So to me, it's an advantage. Now, if we were sitting out and, I was working in San Francisco and getting to work with all the companies in Palo Alto, there's a cost weight benefit, because it's unbelievably expensive to live there. So.
Right. Well, you all do a great job, and I'll say one more thing about your wife. She said the funniest line I've ever heard in my life. I think it was a Monday, and you already know what I'm going to say because you're laughing. But we had a meeting, and I think it was a Monday or a Tuesday, and she had just come back from a conference, and she flat out told us as we were talking, she said, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm on the struggle bus today. And I don't know if I've ever, one, laughed harder, and two, heard the word struggle bus before. And I have, I don't know if that's her phrase and I owe her some royalties, but it's probably the funniest thing I've ever heard. And I think it was the delivery was just as funny as the phrase. But anyway, so Chris is wonderful. She coined the phrase. In my mind, she coined the phrase struggle bus, and so I've used it religiously since that day.
She's there. She is one of the naturally funniest people I've ever encountered.
Very
one
funny.
of the things I love about her. And
Right.
Beyond that,
so you guys are the perfect mix. Seriously, you're the wonderful mix. I adore you guys as a couple. So, all right, so. Let's talk iHeart a little bit. I think so. When, and you probably know this better than anybody. When did all this start with the iHeart kind of conglomeration of all stations kind of coming under one? When that transition's been happening for a while, but iHeart is radio, right? But it's not just radio stations now. They do podcasts. The platform that anyone listening to this that I host my podcasts on is also part of iHeart. So can you just talk about iHeart in general? And then I really want to get into your story, but I want to talk business first. So, for anybody listening, because I want you to have the platform to be able to tell people some of the things that you and I've done together. There's some great opportunities for companies large and small to do some things. And I'm putting a lot on your plate at one time, but let's just talk iHeart. You tell your story. I'll get out of the way.
When I started, I've been there. This is year 9 for me. And when I started, it was still Clear Channel Media and Entertainment, and the company had grown and expanded exponentially. Like you mentioned, 850 plus radio stations across the country. A few years into my time with the company, we had this iHeartRadio app that had exploded in popularity, and so many people sort of identified us with that. And the iHeartRadio Music Festival and all iHeart Country Festival, on and on. So the decision was made by the very brilliant people at the top of our organization to sort of lean into that and rebrand as, we are iHeart Media. We operate, not just the iHeartRadio app and all these independent, great stations across the country, but, we've taken this huge deep dive into the podcasting space, and through partnerships and acquisitions and content partnerships, you've watched that just explode, which for me, I'm a huge fan of the medium, have been really, as like an early adapter, love content in all different genres. For me, it's helped me to rediscover a love for books, history, Malcolm Gladwell. Like I, found his voice and sort of became obsessed with his podcast, and now I've read every book he's written.
Wow.
Same thing with Adam Grant, and even the author Robert Carroll was on a podcast that I listened to, and I invested a ton of time in finishing The Power Broker, which is all about Robert Moses and the sort of inner workings of building the state parks and the Bridge and Tunnel Authority and all the inner workings of New York, and then I ended up down a rabbit hole in this 4-book series on LBJ, which it was.
Is that LeBron James? Because I know we're from Cleveland. Is that LeBron James? Or?
It was.
Okay, just to clarify for the audience.
Believe me, I read a book on the other LBJ too, but yeah, no, it's it's one of those things where what excites me the most about, being with the company that I am is I see, it's not just, you think about the personalities that gravitate toward, our organization, and it's, Will Ferrell. It's, again, Malcolm Gladwell, who I couldn't be a bigger fan of. His company, works in partnership with us, where we're sort of the sales vehicle for their content. And, it's on and on and on. I mean, every week I feel like there's a new announcement. Hey, we just signed on the NBA. We just signed a deal with the NFL. So that's very exciting stuff. And then you think about, brands that, like we now have a partnership where we work with Amazon. So if you want to advertise via Amazon's video platforms, we can be the local connection to that. So that's the stuff that really excites me. And there's some people that well above my pay grade that are a lot smarter and savvier than I am in business that are making those decisions and putting that stuff together that, help to, for me, I think about it like, look at the runway. And to me, the runway for an opportunity to be with this company and grow with this company, it's sort of endless.
It's amazing because it's not just radio ads. I mean, that's what I really want a lot of people to hear is you're not just selling radio ad space. I mean, it's a much, much bigger platform at this point. And again, the very host that holds all of the podcasts that our business actually, we're up to 6 now, and maybe a 7th very soon. They're all on that same platform, which is Spreaker. I think I can say that.
Yeah.
We utilize Spreaker. It's an iHeart company. There's an ad vehicle within that, and one of the cool things is if you want to drop ads in, the ads that come from iHeart, they're fed into your podcast, and those are relationships that iHeart's building, not whoever your podcast is. So anyone listening, plug for Spreaker for sure. It's a fantastic podcasting platform. And it's powered by iHeart. But the other thing I want to mention really quick, and I promise we'll move on to just your story. But with iHeart, I know when you and I have worked together in a few different lives. You've stayed the same. I've kind of took on a lot. But in both places, you guys really worked. And what I appreciate is you came in. And it was more like consulting. It wasn't a sales pitch. It was okay. What are you trying to achieve? You went back to the lab. You came back with some options, and I think that's what I want people to hear is if you're a small business, big business, it doesn't matter. If you're, I would say in Columbus, you need to contact Jeremy because there's great opportunities that he has, and he's got a lot in his tool belt. And I think that's the beauty of iHeart as well. It's not just one thing, and I don't want to speak for you, but I know that was my experience with you personally was you were able to come back with a variety of options because the budgets were what they were. Is that fair to say?
Oh, 100%. And, that again, I think about the evolution from when I started to now. It used to be, hey, we have these 7 radio stations, and, if you want to advertise, even if you're a single location, you're going to reach everybody. But, hey, the great thing about it is you're casting a huge net. The drawback to that can be you're one location operator. Let's say you've got, a scaled back budget that's sort of in line with a single location, which I've run into many times in my career. Challenge is, how do you make that investment work, not have sort of spillover if it's not somewhere, hey, we're reaching people all the way in Marion and, beyond to make sure that investment is as effective as it can be. Well, fast forward to now, and it's zip code targeting with audio. It's zip code targeting with location-based digital, zip code targeting with OTT video. Like, the solutions are such that we really can, build even multiple tactics that are really nimble and super effective. And it makes the challenge to that is you constantly have to study and, really kind of sink your teeth in to the new materials and the evolutions because things are changing by the minute, always for the better. But the upside is you can really, the potential to help somebody and build a campaign that can, because the ultimate goal is this, you grow their business. You take somebody's investment. I want to make sure that it's as effective as possible. As that business grows and prospers, our relationship grows and prospers, which is good for everybody involved.
And I think what we found, and I don't know if, and I'm not going to do it justice, but we had limited budget. And this is in a previous life with the organization I was with. We had very limited budget. We met with you. You left. You came back. You said, "All right, here's an idea." We did something where it was an auction, and I don't know if that's still available, so I don't want to
We
speak
still
out of
do
school.
every quarter.
Okay, there you go. So it was an auction, and we had a product that we were able to sell, which was something that for us was, a part of our portfolio and something we needed to do. You were able to create this package where what we were trying to, a target we were trying to reach, you were able to auction, and then because of the auction, you all achieved what you needed to achieve. We got to do radio interviews on multiple stations, the car wash, as they call it in the business, I guess. Am I saying that right?
Absolutely.
We got to do the car wash through multiple stations. We got exposure. We got a lot of different things, and our budget wasn't like blown on one little thing. So anyway, I know that's very vague, but that's why contact Jeremy. Like if you're hearing this and you've got something coming up, he's your guy. And that's just, that's the best I can do to give a testimonial from not one place, but two places that I've now been where I contacted you, and we were able to put a package together on a very shoestring budget. So
that recommendation means a lot. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so that's iHeart. So let's talk about you, man. You and I met, and you're a Cleveland guy, or at least from northeast Ohio, right?
I'll claim Cleveland. Yeah, Canton area, fringe Canton.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ever since that guy the kid from Akron, he claims Cleveland. So I think they kind of morphed ever since that guy that's on the wall behind me.
Anything, like west of Youngstown and east of Toledo kind of falls into that.
So it's not all 216, which is my heartbeat, but we'll claim it's Cleveland anyway.
Hey everyone, my name is Cammie Pranel and I'm the Executive Director for My Unscripted. We hope you are enjoying today's interview. My Unscripted is dedicated to helping others find their voice, passion, and follow their dreams. Our team can help create websites, apps, YouTube channels, podcasts, media, and social content. Whatever your passion and vision, we can help. Our good friend Manny Ahome of Samaritan's Feet once said, "Make sure your dreams and goals are big enough to create room for others to join you." We've created room for you to join us too. Find out more at myunscripted.com. Now let's join Aaron for the second half of today's interview.
I'm so thankful you came on today because I want to tell your story, but I really wanted to cover the iHeart thing first. But you're an amazing guy, and I just have so much admiration for you and Krista. So anyway, tell your story, brother.
Well, I will say, talking about sort of that area I'm from kind of leads into it. I mean, you think about it, like, again, we've been here in Columbus since 2007. Prior to that, pretty nomadic, even into, early married life. But, I grew up originally from Dade City, Florida, not to be confused with Dade County. It's a very rural, small town. If you've ever heard of St. Leo College, now St. Leo University, that's like the big thing there. But spent about 3 years there. My folks moved up to the Canton area. Shortly after that, Dad moved back to Florida. Mom and I kind of moved around through the Canton area. And, for me, I think I tallied it up one time. I started to lose track. I think I attended from, say, kindergarten. Kindergarten for me, I was like, I learned this reading my LBJ books. I was a Head Start kid, program, that we can thank LBJ for. But, from, say that kindergarten window through high school, I think I attended 11 different schools. Some of that's, hey, you moved up from elementary to middle to high school. But, there was a lot of movement, very nomadic, at that time. And for a lot of years, it was just me and my mom, and sporadically hey, go spend a week with your dad, that sort of thing, fly down, end up getting potentially, left at a NASCAR race or gas station.
You had to be there for a pregame to understand that.
But, I did a lot, I mentioned this to you when we were talking before we kicked things off. I did a lot of reflecting, got a chance to probably spend more time with the family on my dad's side and with my dad than I have in a long time. And just kind of, my wife and I talked through it. My wife comes from a place, Krista's parents were like, that, sort of typical, Catholic family, church every Sunday, kind of like the family you'd see in a TGIF, Friday sitcom, and just good quality people. We just lost her dad in January. He's one of the greatest men I've ever known. Someone that I try to model my life as a father and a husband after. And, I think about her coming into us coming into this relationship and meeting together. And I remember, I didn't talk a lot about who I was. I think there was a piece of that where, like she hadn't met my family. She didn't understand, you come from this very stable upbringing with, parents that are always together, love each other, come to all your games, coach your sports. And, for her, she couldn't fathom the fact that I'm at that point, I wasn't on a speaking terms with my mother and stepfather, and she just couldn't process it. She was indoctrinated into our world pretty quickly. I said, okay, you want to meet everybody? My younger brother's graduating. We'll go to his graduation party. I'll spare you the details. It ended with my wife in tears.
Oh, no.
My mother trying to block the car to get out of the parking lot. And she was like, I completely get it now. I thought, you were unreasonable. No, this is normal. Run as far from that as you can. But, I think about, in all that, circumstances. I mean, my mother, I have gratitude for the fact that I know, listen, there are, a lot of people can give up and just say, hand a kid off and you end up in the foster system. You right. End up in a situation, at the end of the day, I've got all my limbs, outside of any repressed memories, there's nothing I can remember that's that terrible, I remember I sat in a session with a therapist one time. I said, hey, listen, I'm telling her a little bit about this and that. She's like, that's pretty rough stuff. I said, hey, there's kids that are born in, third world countries that from day one are struggling to get a meal and don't have the basic, comforts that I've experienced in my life. She's like, that is not a good way to look at things. Well,
it's not bad though.
Well, that's how, I think about, I say all that and I talk about, there are times where through those, 11 different schools I went to, it was probably 20 different living situations, lots of different dads and boyfriends and, lots of things that kids, shouldn't be exposed to from whether it's substance abuse, domestic violence, you name it. Luckily, I had some grandparents that were sort of a rock, kind of those pseudo-stable, kind of stepped in when they needed to. And, but you do a lot of, as a young kid, a lot of moving, a lot of crowd surfing, a lot of, living with this relative, that relative. And, I think about, getting to the point where now in my second high school, I've gotten to a point where I've got a stepfather who, we can't even stand to be in the same room. Don't have a lot of respect for the guy. It's sort of a, situation where I think it was 17. I was a junior in high school, and it was, hey, things are going to be this way, or you can get out. And I said, that's all you had to say?
Wow.
Loaded up. I had a little pickup truck, Ford Ranger, maybe the best vehicle I've ever owned. Piled it down and hit the road. And from a lot of different couches until I kind of found myself into a place where I got up on my feet, finished high school up, ended up a couple jobs, lucked into, what was to be a summer job before I left, had enlisted for the Army National Guard, was going to, hey, that was my pathway to school, a lot of other things transpired that didn't work out. Found myself working for a company that I spent the next 6 years with and built my career in that industry. Left to go work for a startup there, and that's what led me to where I am here. But again, I kind of threw a lot at you at fire hose. I wanted to give all of that to one. It's not a story I tell very often, and aside from my wife and some people that kind of grew up, like childhood friends, a lot of people don't know that. It's not. For me, a lot of times, all that information is not a pride point for me. It's sort of been a thing that I've kind of kept tucked away, and I don't talk about solely because, there's always been some shame to it, and the fact that, You don't want to be the kid that, like I think now the irony of it is, I think about my kids. My youngest daughter would rather go to the thrift store and buy vintage clothing. And I think a lot of kids are this way than go to the mall and get a couple new outfits. Her and I battle on them all the time. I'm like, listen, Dad's saying I'll go treat you. Let's go do something. I just want to go down to, for me as a kid, that was a way of life. That was it. It's like, hey, we're going to school shop down at, there wasn't a lot of vintage clothing. It was just old stuff.
Right.
So, but
man, I got to tell you, I'm not often speechless on this podcast, and it's not an act. Dude, I had no idea. I mean, I literally had no idea. And so 2 things I want to tell you. One, man, thank you. Because like you just said, you don't share that. And you would come on this platform and share that. That means the world to me. And I already told you guys my admiration for you. Now I have even more. And I think that leads me to point number 2 is I would never know that. I would never know that. Knowing you and Chris, again, I think that's the point. We don't ever know someone, we see people, and I'm telling you, you are, from our interaction, you're always professional, looking the part, man. You look like Clark Kent, always making me look bad when you come in the place. I'm always feeling bad about myself because I'm like, man, this guy looks like $1 million. He's got the world on a string. He's got a successful career in a very tough. Again, we're going back now, and again, this is unscripted. We have not talked about. I am as shocked as anything, and if anybody, I don't know if this will go on YouTube. It depends on how it goes, but if it does, go back and look at my face while you were talking, because I'm telling you, man, I'm shocked as anything. It's amazing to me that, again, we just never know what people are going through or what people have been through when we meet them. Because if I was to guess, I would say you had a great upbringing, solid foundation. Dude, I would have had no idea because of who you are today. And that's ultimately what I want to get to is who you are today is not who you were. And, man, that's a credit to you. That's huge, dude. It's so big that you're not who you're not your past. You're who you are today. And that's a credit to hard work on your part. And there's a lot I'm sure we're leaving out. We just kind of did the end of the chapters of your story. I think you just kind of skipped to the end and gave us the little cliff notes. But man, I don't know. I know I'm all over the place right now, but welcome to Unscripted. I'm very shocked that that story is who you are, because it's not who you are that I know. The guy that I know is a great dad and a great husband, and dedicated to both of those 2 things, and successful in his career. And that's those two don't jive, and that's why I guess I'm so shocked, because not often would someone be able to create what you've been able to create today with what you were exposed to younger.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm lucky. I've lucked out a lot of ways in life, and I think that, luck is a big thing. There's a lot of advantages that I've had in the sense that, like I mentioned, I had grandparents that were sort of like that backstop for me. Right. Young professionally, I had some great mentors. I think all the time, there was a guy I worked for, Santino Di Bernardino, still a guy up in Cleveland. He ended up giving me a chance with a job I probably wasn't qualified at all for, that I knew I could, that I didn't think I could do. And not only gave me that shot, but was like a tough, he was like a coach, like a drill sergeant. You didn't mess up. There wasn't a chance. The leash was very short, and he worked the heck out of me. I mean, I was working 6-7 day weeks. At the end of the day, I was making more money than I'd ever imagined was possible at a young age. So there was sort of that, carrot to keep going. But I think about how grateful I am, and believe me, I was miserable at times working for him, because he, get a call on Saturday morning, a little rusty, and it'd be like, you didn't want to take that call. But he took me under his wing, and to talk about this guy, I'll tell you, I mean, I still stay in touch with him. I'm very grateful for him, but I remember Chris and I had, we met young, we were,
There's a highway that stretches across the 93 days of summer, where worship isn't offered to the sun, but to the smoking tire, the S-curve, and the spin turn. And if you ride it, make sure you do it in a Dodge Charger, Challenger, or Durango. Because on this highway, the lines being blurred are the ones between drivers and demons. Welcome to Highway 93. Dodge is a registered trademark.
Engaged by 21, moved in together, and I went out to buy just got a nice new apartment. Nicest place we'd ever lived, right? Go out to buy a new set of furniture, and I remember going to the furniture store, and I'm, 20, 21 years old. I didn't have bad credit, I just didn't have any credit. I remember I'm at I think it was what preceded Macy's, like a Lazarus, and I wanted to buy this little leather furniture set, and we were going to take advantage of their 12 months financing. And the guy's like, well, we can only qualify you for, $800 or $500 or whatever it was. And I remember calling St. Pete, I'm like, hey man, I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. He gets in his car, drives down, walks over to the counter, throws his ID down, he goes, see what you can get from, see what I'm good for. And the guy, well, you've been approved for $25,000. He's like, all right, Jay, here's the deal. You're going to make the 12 payments to me. You miss one, I'm coming after you. That's right. But that was a great mentor and a life-changing experience, and, working for him. And then, throughout my professional career, I can, name all the way to my current, the people that I work for currently that have helped to shape and mold and have taken, more than anything, a vested interest in my growth. And that's the greatest gift in the world. I mean, I try to give that back throughout my, anytime that I can, whether it's a little tidbit of advice or just some help or some guidance. But I think too, and the reason I kind of went into that whole sort of reader's, like that Cliff's Notes version of, of my life is, I look at that experience and think of it as, I try to think of it to me as a gift. It's how do I want to be perceived as a person? How do I want my kids to perceive me as a father? The thing that, and again, my dad and I have got over the years later in life have become really close, and he's kind of gone out of his way to help. He's a guy that doesn't have much to give, and he give you everything he's got. But I think about I was a kid that played every sport I could get my hands on. From being very young to finishing high school, and my dad never saw me play down football. I remember thinking about that, and the end result, I never put, it wasn't a conscious decision, but my oldest daughter, I missed her first lacrosse game in 13 years because we were on vacation and they were playing Louisville. Got to watch it on TV, but the first one I didn't get to see in person in 13 years. And I remember we were at a sticky point because her very first game that she was going to suit up was out in Marquette. And I remember, Krista's like, you're not driving 8 hours to Marquette, driving back the same day, and happened to just be like right before Valentine's Day. So I come home, I told her, I said, I've never missed one since, first grade, blah, blah, blah. She comes home from work. She's like, I hope you didn't make any plans this weekend. Slaps a plane ticket down and says, you're going to Marquette.
That's fantastic.
But I think about all of those things that I remember, because some of that stuff does impact you. You think about, I remember my, like not having friends at the house, depending on, where we were, because either one, the house, or two, the situation that you're in where your parents are saying off, insulting things to your friends, or just, embarrassing, like when I say embarrassing things, like unbelievably, next level inappropriate. I mean, I had a stepfather at one point where he had a little, small home improvement company. He used to hire my buddies in the summer and then stiff them on their paychecks. It's like,
oh my goodness.
So, you think about that stuff, and that's, again, for me, it has been the mere, the opposite, or that 180 model of, how I try to live life. And I do think of that as something that is sort of a gift in a sense to have the, that, you can take a lot of things in life for granted, and when you know what the other side of the coin looks like, I think it's easier to lean into who you want to be, if that makes sense. And don't get me wrong,
it does.
I make plenty of mistakes. I piss my wife off all the time. You know?
You know, but here's the thing. There's two things that as you were talking again, I thought of, and one of them, my mom used to always say, God sends his angels. And, when I was growing up, I'm like, whatever. I don't know what that means. But clearly God has sent his angels in your life. Again, people that have shepherded and mentored you, maybe when you didn't even realize it, but now you do, as you were talking. And then, the other thing that I was thinking is the fact that it's incredible to me. We're sports fans, and there's a saying that say you always play to the level of your baseball card. So like if a guy's hitting 350, if his baseball card says he's a career 269, there's like a month where he's going to hit 100. You know what I mean? Your watermark. You eventually kind of play it, and I know this probably doesn't make sense at the moment, but I think as parents and as people, we tend to play to the level of our baseball card that was what we were growing up. You know what I mean? We become our parents. We become our upbringing, the things that we were. And as a dad, you know this. Like we mold and shape in that clay who our kids are. My kids are all Carolina fans, and they're so excited for this weekend. By the way, Final Four.
Hey, we're rooting for it. I got that penciled in my bracket. I was thinking of you when I made that pick.
I had to get that in there. I'm sorry. Anyway, but no, my kids wear Carolina gear because I love Carolina, and I don't know if they ever had a choice, but for a lot of people in Columbus, like you, Columbus, it's Ohio State, right?
It's the Browns.
And it's just a sports team. It's a non-negotiable. Like we and they take that with them, and they're going to be Carolina fans the rest of their life, most likely, or they're going to gravitate towards a certain vacation spot because that's where the family always went, or on a sunny day they're going to go for bike rides because that's what the family always. I mean, my wife and I do this all the time. She was raised a certain way, I was raised a certain way, and you try. My point in all of that context is, man, you have. Again, people should probably go back and listen to your story, what you were telling, because you have kind of torn up your baseball card and said, "I'm not going to be a 260 hitter." I'm gonna be a 300 hitter or a 350 hitter. You've redefined your baseball card. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know if that even makes sense. But what I'm most impressed by is, again, in the things that you said, is I know of you and your bride is that you're raising great daughters, and you just said it, man. You haven't missed a game. Like, that's not playing to the level of your baseball card. Is I think my point. You're not gravitating back to the way that you were raised and the life you knew. You've shattered that, and you're creating a new baseball card that your daughters will now gravitate towards. Does that make sense? I don't even know if that makes sense.
It does. I'm following, and that's what I hope. I think my goal. And my wife and I talked about it. Like I said, her situation, first and foremost, more credit than anybody in my life. I talked about Santino. My wife is someone who I think, I'm the luckiest person on the planet. We met at a time where I don't think either of us were looking to, find the love of our life. And it just happened to, we met, sparks flew. Off the podcast some other time, I'll tell you the story about how we met. And
can't wait.
Yeah, how pleasant she was to me when I asked her for directions. But
love it. It probably has something to do with the struggle bus, right? It's probably along those same lines. Right?
It was classic Krista. But she has been the rock in my life, and awesome. The person that it was funny because we were so young, and I wasn't quite ready to grow up yet. And Krista was like 0 to mom, and it was kind of like the person that helped. I can honestly say, I know this is probably like a greeting card, cliche type saying, but she makes me the best version of myself. And sometimes I go, it drags me to it kicking and screaming, but
right.
that I can 100% say. And but what I'll for us, we talk about, because as sort of, to me, as ideal as her situation was. You know, her dad was a steel worker. You know, the steel industry sort of went away. You know, they went through some things that, you know, economic crunch, you know, especially at a formidable, you know, just a year before, 2 years before she's getting ready to, you know, leave for college, and plans changed. And instead of leaving, it was staying and going to school. And, you know, but we talk about the goal being, you know, getting our kids to a point where, you know, they have a lot of, you know, you can't eliminate every disadvantage. You can't create every advantage, but you want to level it up to where they have, you know, their hurdles are less, the ceiling is higher. And, you know, we feel like in a lot of cases, you know, we get to that, you know, when we see the fact that, you know, they have opportunities we wouldn't have had, you know, it's like, okay, that's a win. You know, like, all right, the journey's never done, right? It's like, you know, we tell our oldest all the time, like, hey, you're on your own. Don't mess up. There's some mistakes. We can't, you know, you will lower that ceiling. So,
yeah.
But,
you know, but I'll co-sign that. I think we might have stood in the worst. I don't know. Your lacrosse tends to be in terrible weather, but you and I and Krista might have stood in the worst weather ever at the Davidson game.
That was
that the worst?
Yes,
it was pretty bad. So that's just a co-sign that you have been at every game, no matter rain or shine. Because it was a lot of rain and it was miserable.
Oh, I'm still thawing out from that. That was one of the coldest sideways rain. You know, like our umbrellas were doing no good. But they just played Butler Friday, and I'm still thawing out. It was like 30 degrees. These poor kids are out there, you know. But it's you know, that's one of the, you know, for me it's, you know, such a big motivation to just help them get on the right path and you know, be in a situation where, like, you know, again, it's funny for a dad to be embarrassing telling a dad joke, or because dad's got his, you know, his dad ones on, or, you know, whatever. But the things I think about when, you know, when I was a kid that embarrassed me, like, I just never wanted my kids to be at that level, you know, like, never be something where they didn't want to have their, like, be ashamed to have their friends come over, or be afraid of what, you know, what explosive situation might happen. The other thing, the other goal of wanting to tell you that, you know, kind of give you a glimpse into that story is, I think about from, it had to be 15 on, and keep in mind, there was some reason for this too. I was a knucklehead kid. You know, when you're raised with these wide parameters where you don't have to come home, where you can, you know, mom and dad are doing worse than you are, you know, potentially. You know, I mean, listen, not that I'm saying this is a pride point. I ended up in the back, as a teenager, I ended up in the back of a couple cop cars. I spent at 17, New Year's Eve, handcuffed to a bench in a police station. Nothing nefarious. I just happened to get pulled over with lots of beer in the back of my car and no explanation how I got there. But I can remember, and I say this because if there are kids listening to the podcast, one, don't load your trunk up with a bunch of beer. It's a bad idea.
That's right. But stay away from New Year's Eve in the police station.
But throughout high school, I had teachers, counselors, you know, people that are supposed to guide you to help you make the best choices. And maybe they thought they were helping you make the best choices, but it was, college isn't for you, maybe trade school, go talk to the recruiter. Not that these are bad decisions to make, but I felt like, to me as a young person, a lot of people telling me, your options are very limited. Like, you know, it was, I can remember asking specifically, sitting in my high school counselor's office, like, hey, I'm applying to Ohio State. I need this, this, and this. He's like, I don't know why you're bothering. You know, like,
wow.
Mind you, Ohio State did accept me. It was, you know, delayed enrollment based on my 2.6 GPA. But back in the late 90s, Ohio State was saying yes to anyone with a pulse. It's not like it is today.
Checkbook, right?
Yeah. But it's, you know, it's one of those things where I think back, like, my message on all that is, no matter what you face, no matter what your adversity is, no matter what you have to overcome, don't let anyone else define who you can be, what you can do. You know, there's so many different examples of people out there. You think about, you know, Dave Thomas, founder of Wendy's. You know, that's a guy that didn't graduate high school, built one of the largest fast food chains in the world. I know that's an extreme example, but I just say, who had, you know, shame on someone, shame on an adult telling any teenager who's still developing who they are and their personality, their motivations, their drives, their interests, what they can't do. Hey, here are the things you can do. But, that's one of those things for me where I think back about, like, you start to believe it. When you're young, you believe, like, I almost, I joke about this sometimes too. I almost joined the IBEW out of high school because I was like, well, this is, not, again, I have a lot of friends that are electricians. My father was an electrician. But I can think now about how much I like doing electrical work because I do some of it around my house. And I think every time I install a fixture or change an outlet, or thank God I don't do this for a living because I hate it. Like, it's just not for me. But again, I just, if there's even one person that hears it that has had that sort of been in that situation where someone has told them, their ceiling is lower than it should be, I call BS. Your story's yet to be written. I didn't figure out who I was or what I was going to do until I was about 19 years old. I see my kids. I got an 18-year-old kid who, she's going to school. She's, studying political science. She doesn't know if she wants to be in government or law or, she might want to go run somebody's social media channel. It's like, but for me, I'm so grateful that she's in the sport that she's in because she's got a coach who is a tough, accountable, holds the kids accountable. Like, I remember that messaging when we were there on a recruiting visit. We went to like half a dozen different visits where, like, I remember walking out. It was her choice, but when she said, that's where I want to go, I was like, you will come out of this 4 years from now being an adult, having responsibility. Like that. I thought back to my experience working for a guy that was, hey, there's no showing up. There's no being late. There's no not hitting the number or, getting the job.
Yeah. Again, there's so much wisdom in everything you just said. And I was fortunate in that I had parents that were supportive, but I didn't care. I didn't care. So, and I'm not allowed to say it, I guess, anymore on the podcast, but as many have heard, I got a 13 on my ACT. That's on me. I didn't care. I just didn't care. I didn't care about school. I didn't care about, I just didn't see a bigger picture. It wasn't because I had a situation at home that wasn't, that, your story is a little different in that you didn't have that support system, but you did have people that would come along and do that. And yet you were still able to get into Ohio State, make a nice career for yourself. And so, we learn either way. We learn, we find our way somehow, I think is the point. And I love what you said, because I think even as adults, within the last 18 months, I finally got the message that you can't let someone else determine your worth. Right? I mean, if you do, you're going to spend your whole life thinking your value and your worth is what someone else determines it is. And if that's how you spend your whole life, there's a lot of people that will go to their grave that had someone else define their worth their whole life. And, if they're happy, cool. But I think the message that you said and what I'm saying is don't do that. Like, you know who you are at your core. You knew who you were even as a teenager. You knew your value. You didn't let somebody else determine your value, whether it was your upbringing or any of those other things. You determined your value, and look at where you are today, right? I mean, I think that's so powerful what you said, is you just can't let someone else determine your worth. You'll be much happier when you decide what you are worth. And anyone listening to this, you are worth something. You have value. Figure out what that is and spend the rest of your life doing it, because it'll make all the difference in the world.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you, perfect example, I left the first company I worked for. I was with them for 6 years, got recruited to go to a startup and this is back in my previous professional life in the health club industry. Went to work for a startup, high energy, high pace, good income, red line. I mean, we ran hard, 6 years straight at like maximum bandwidth. And I got to a point where my kids were getting older and my wife wanted to get back into the workforce, and I was working, I was on the road Monday to Saturday, and even on Sundays, busy on the computer, busy on phone calls. And I think back, I felt like, hey, here's who I am. This is all I know. I'm making this, I can't replace this income. Like, I felt, like I was in a corner. I was trapped. And it was a situation where for probably a year and a half longer than I should have been there, in a really unhealthy, not happy, sort of out of commitment and obligation going to this job, and scared to leave. And I left. Fast forward, I find myself in the health club industry. Guess what? Replace that income. I found a job that I actually like doing. 9 years later, I'm still doing it. I love it as much or more. And the income has continued to grow. And I think back to that, that version of myself 9 years ago. And I'm like, I wish I could go visit. And, I wish I could peel back even further, but say, hey, what you think, you think you're in this like unique situation. Right. Not at all. Like which again, I've talked to other friends that are, whether it's mortgage industry, other industries where it's like, I can't leave what I'm doing. That's all I know. Mm-hmm. The skills to be, a hardworking person with good integrity who, like sales is people skills. It's not, you can learn a product, but it's, can you talk to people? Can you help, can you communicate with people on a level that they want to understand what you're talking about, and they trust and like you enough to open their ear to you, right? It's not, it's to go back to Santino, I remember, I worked for him at Valley Total Fitness, if you remember that relic of a brand.
Oh, absolutely.
And I remember all the time he used to say, this is the people business, it's a people business sprinkled with fitness. Like that was, like I'm right now, I'm in the people business sprinkled with audio. It's
But it's so much more than that, and that's why I go back to, it's funny how it's almost like a Seinfeld episode. We're going to go full circle here, because I go back to what we talked about at the very beginning. You and your wife are both very good in a very difficult sale. I spent a lot of my life in sales, and that's a very, very difficult job. Both the markets that you two are in, not the Columbus market, but audio and then billboard, like those are two very, very difficult things, and yet you're both very successful. And it's because you care about people, you're great with people, and that's why I enjoyed working with you in the previous positions that I was in. So, man, we've covered a ton of ground. We covered a lot more ground than I even knew we were going to cover, and this has been awesome. Let me ask you a couple of questions. One, if anybody's listening to this and they want to contact you with regard to, just learning more about iHeart and the many solutions you guys have, because we've only talked about radio. There's digital, as you said. There's website. I mean, you guys do a lot. It's a pretty huge portfolio of things that you all do.
Full service digital agency on the back end of our company, from creative to web design to CRM. You name it, we can help with it. I love working with people. If I can help anybody, they can. Email's probably the easiest way to get me. It's just my first and last name at iHeartMedia.com. Again, it's one of those scenarios, and where my goal on here wasn't to come, talk about how great iHeart is. It is, by the way. Or,
right.
But if there is anybody that I can help, I'm happy to.
And it's companies large and small. Again, I want to make sure, and again, because that's the least I can do for you is give that opportunity back. Is companies large and small. Again, if you got a massive budget, by all means, call Jeremy.
Yes.
He can help you spend it. If you're a company, a very small company that's just trying to figure out how can we grow our sales, grow our awareness, any of those things, contact Jeremy, because and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you can at least, if nothing else, hear him out and say, we've got a solution for you, and get creative when you have to. In both the situations I was in, I was not working for some massive company. We had a very small budget, and you were able to help us out both times by getting very creative. And so contact, it's Jeremy Alexander at iHeart.
iHeartMedia.com.
iHeartMedia.com. Okay, thank you. Jeremy Alexander at iHeartMedia.com. Awesome. And then Krista, let's give Krista a plug. Is she still with Lamar? Am I allowed to say their name?
She is, yeah. And I have to, I'll be in trouble if I don't mention this. She is the top salesperson in the house. I just want the record to state. You know, I'm mom's number one, dad's number two.
It's the same in my house. And I would echo something. I want to go back to something you said. And it drives my wife crazy, but anytime somebody gives us credit for our kids, I always say the same thing. I'm like, man, 99% of that is my bride. Honestly, I'd have screwed them up 100%. Big time. And so thankful for our brides. But so how do they get a hold of Krista if they're interested?
Her email is cmalexander@lamar.com.
Lamar, Lamar?
Yep.
Lamar.com. And that's primarily it's the digital boards. It's really all the boards, but
boards. Yeah, anything. If you see it on the side of the highway, there's an 8 in 10 chance that it's a Lamar board.
It's a Lamar board, and Krista can get very creative as well. Yeah. Very creative as well. So you guys are the best. I've said it many times. I'm so thankful that a previous business. Somehow we're all introduced to one another. Y'all are a blast to be with, and I'm just thankful. And I'm honestly so thankful again that you came on here and shared something that you just said you don't share very often. That's, dude, I'm gonna spend the rest of the night thinking about that you use this platform for that. That means a ton to me.
Well, Aaron, I'm not gonna lie. I've been nervous to come on. I know we talked about this some time ago. As much as I enjoy podcasts and I've worked, behind the scenes in this world, it was sort of, there was that little element of, hesitation. But this is a step for me to kind of shed some of that shame. I appreciate, you were somebody I trust telling that story to. And it's one of those things for me where, again, it's, I think there's as my wife and I talk through stuff, as I've talked, just even today, I feel like a little bit of a weight lifted, having an opportunity to share a little bit of that and not feel bad about it,
It's so funny because I think 15 minutes before we got on here, and people can check the receipts on Twitter because they're time-stamped, I shared something that the couple that I interviewed before this one last week, amazing couple, and he said the words, God gets the glory when we share our story, and I just tweeted. I did not know what we were going to talk about today. I just shared that before we got on here, and the point of that is when we share our story, man, it sets someone else free too, not just you, but someone else, because somebody else heard that story. Again, as you said, maybe it's a high school. Maybe it's somebody that hates their job. I don't know. You shared a lot of really valuable information in sharing your story, and that's why I love this platform, is because it's not about me. It's about other people's story, and what you shared tonight may help someone else to now go and share their story on some other platform or some other place or with, people that they need to. And so thank you, man. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for being such a great friend. I still can't thank you enough for coming out and braving that that rain and weather. When there were a lot of relatives that wouldn't have stuck it out for that, man. So
it was awesome. It was awesome. I enjoyed it. I just enjoy being with you both. You're a wonderful couple and you're great people, and I enjoy being with great people. So it was my pleasure.
We appreciate you. You're the man. And here, I'm going to do this for you. Since we're in.
You can put it on.
Well, I'm going to show you why it sits on the shelf.
Uh-oh.
There you go.
There you go. There it is. So if you're listeling to audio, he just rocked the Unscripted hat, and I need to get him some new merch.
But pumpkin hat.
Well, I appreciate you. You go give your wife a big hug and tell her the struggle bus is still the funniest line I've ever heard in my life, and she already knows that. But we appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Unscripted Podcast with your host, Aaron Conner. Make sure to like, share, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to check out my song Great and Mighty One on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your music. We'll see you next time on Unscripted with Aaron Conrad.
There's a highway that stretches across the 93 days of summer, where worship isn't offered to the sun, but to the smoking tire, the S-curve, and the spin turn. And if you ride it, make sure you do it in a Dodge Charger, Challenger, or Durango. 'Cause on this highway, the lines being blurred are the ones between drivers and demons. Welcome to Highway 93. Dodge is a registered trademark.